take the fuel tank off so I don't have fuel sitting here in the basement. Okay, subframe is out. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start by cleaning up these linkages, pulling them apart. Got this cap here I'm going to put the bearings into. If I can get this thing out. Well, since I was having issues getting the bearings out of these linkages here, I took them to the shop my dad works at and used the press. Also cleaned them up while we were there. Turned out pretty good. Next I'm going to be tearing down this rear shock. Alright, so the first thing I believe I need to do is move this spring up further so I can take the spring seat off. So I'm going to start by loosening these nuts. This tool I have is a little bit too big, so it's a little bit of a pain to use. But it does get the job done. Helps if you turn it the right way. Got enough room to slide this spring seat up, pull it off. Now the spring should come off. Gotta get this bolt and nut out of the way. Now we got the spring off, and now we should be able to take these off. Alright, that took a really long time, but I finally got both of these jam nuts for the spring off. I wish I had some way to easily clean this right now, because that would have made those threads unthread way easier. Would have gone a lot quicker, would have been a lot better for the parts. But just working with what I have right now. This bump stop in here looks terrible. So I forgot to mention this earlier before I started tearing the shock down. This is roughly where it would sit on the bike. That lines right up with this PCV for the engine crankcase. This PCV is known to spit out a bunch of oil if you overfill your bike, which I do a lot because this bike burns a lot of oil. if we look at where this tube comes out, that is right in line with all this oil splatter. So I think a lot of that is actually coming from the engine and not the shock itself. But because this is a 20-year-old bike, I don't know the history, I'm going to rebuild this shock anyway. I'm going to go ahead and throw some of this smaller stuff that will fit into the ultrasonic cleaner. Okay, let's see how these smaller parts turned out. Better than they started. Still a ways to go. The spring looks a lot better. Next, I'm going to work on cleaning this rear shock itself. Well, it's almost 50 degrees here in Michigan in the middle of February, so I figured I'd take the opportunity to test out the new shock press. I'm going to press out this spherical bearing at the top of the shock here. Okay, I got the shock set up in the press. Let's get this bearing out. Well, it looks like the camera fell down, so I don't know how much of that it caught, but here's the shock out. Alright, so it looks like the bearing was just the perfect size to get stuck in this socket. So now I'm going to use, I think this is the inner race to one of my Grizzly wheel bearings. So I'm going to set the socket on top of that, and I found this random bolt, and I'm going to press it out through the top. Okay, that old bearing is out. Now I'm going to remove the nitrogen, or drain it rather. So I'm going to remove this cap. Then I have a valve core tool, and I'm going to release the pressure. Okay, now the pressure is released, and I'm going to remove the valve core itself. So now this cap should be able to push down in. There's a stopper ring that's got to be pulled out. Honda just says use a suitable tool to push down. So I'm going to use this socket and give it some light taps with the hammer. There we go. You can see in here that shock fluid is leaking all around, so that nitrogen reservoir definitely needs to be replaced. Alright, I missed it with the camera, but I got this stopper ring. Now I'm going to remove this damping adjuster. Whoop. Yeah, that shock oil is pretty nasty. Pump the shock a few times. Okay, I'm back in the basement where it's warm. I'm going to be taking out the end of this shock. It should just pry up. Okay, next I'm going to push down this damper seal. Then I should be able to get that next stopper ring out. Took a lot of playing with this one, so I missed getting that on camera too, but I did get this stopper ring started now as well. It's been a while. I've been sidetracked with other projects, but down here working on the XR again in the basement. Last I remember, I was having trouble getting this cap for the nitrogen bladder out. Luckily, I found this valve tool at O'Reilly's. Can't beat that price. So my plan is to screw it on here, and hopefully I can get underneath it and pry at it, because otherwise I don't really have a way to grab at this cap. Now, the reason I bought this new one here, instead of using the one I already used to take the valve core out, is because this one will actually fit down in this bore here. The other one, this part sticks out too far. I'm going to start, I'm just going to try and pull it. I can't tell if that moved or not. Got a little bit of PB blaster. I'll put it down there, see if that'll free it up. It's still in there good. I'm gonna let it soak for a little bit. I've been playing around with it. I think I finally figured out something that'll work. I got this remover tool screwed on here. I'm going to use some big pliers here, grab it and pull straight up. And with any luck, oh yep, that just popped up. It's moving. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's coming out just by hand now. Very slowly, but it's got some deformation in there, so I'd say it's probably time that was replaced. And imagine it just kind of pops off. Oh yeah, I can feel there's like a little groove in there. Yep, okay. So yeah, and just a groove in here that pops off, and a little lip inside here. The stopper ring is already out of this damper body, but it's not just coming out just by pulling, as the shop manual might suggest. So I think I'm going to go out to the shed and try and rig something up with my press to somehow reverse it so I can actually pull and get this shock shaft out. This is back to classic working conditions for me. Out in the shed, no heat, no electricity, no light, all done by the light of the headlamp on my head. So here's what I got figured out for the shock. For this end, I went looking through this box here, which has got all kinds of bolts and random junk that I pulled off my Ranger, off the old engine when I was building it. I found this bolt here, which I think was maybe an intake manifold bolt at one point before it all rusted out. It fits pretty decent in there. A little smaller than I'd like, but it should do. We all know that feeling, right? Then I was looking at this hole on the top, and I was like, man, what am I gonna find that's big enough to fit in there? And then I remembered, several years ago, my friend bought me this bolt as a gag gift for my birthday. Massive thing, the biggest one he could find in the store. And I went in the house and dug it out, found it. Wouldn't you know, it's a perfect fit for this top hole. So here's my first attempt at a rig to get this done. I got the shock through the top of the frame for this press, and I got the bolt going across, and it's ran through down here, and then this bolt is right here. This is the actual part that moves up and down with the press. So I have a old ratchet strap that's destroyed that I'm going to loop through here around that a few times. We'll see if that works. I have a feeling as it goes down where it's constrained here, it's going to stay in place, and then this whole thing is going to tilt this way, not actually pull it down. But I'm going to try it first and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this ratchet strap is junk because I can't remember if it was on this side or the other, but it just ripped right off where the hook was. But the rest of it is alright. So I just wrapped it around the entire length of the strap, give it as much strength as possible. Let's see how it does. Oh, the bolt's slipping up here. That is promising, but it didn't tilt. That actually worked. Awesome. I remember when my friend initially brought me that bolt, we both thought it was pretty funny. We were making jokes, laughing, trying to think of how such a huge bolt could possibly be useful for one of us. Maybe if you're working on tractors or big heavy equipment, I could see that being easy to find a use for. But for both of us, it's just a ridiculously big bolt, especially since that time I was still living in an apartment with none of this junk. So, Alex, thank you for the bolt. It came in handy tonight. Right now I gotta get this ratchet strap out of here. Okay, I'm gonna grab this shock. Oops. Well, that was good for it, I'm sure. Ooh, nice. Alright, anyway, I'm gonna grab this shock and bring it back inside to the basement, finish tearing it down, figure out what parts I need to buy. Now that I finally got the shock body all stripped down, I'm going to be sending it to work with my dad to get it cleaned up, especially here in these threads here where it's all nasty. Making good progress. Next thing I got to do is get this nut off the top here. I got to put it in a vise, so I'll take it outside for that. I don't really have a good place to mount a vise, so a few years back I built this one. Just goes into the trailer hitch on my truck. Well, that's not great. I hope that doesn't cause a problem later. I'm hoping I can just cut this thread off and maybe use some Loctite on the threads when I put the new bolt on, but the shop manual didn't say anything about that. It just said put it in a vise and take the knot off. I think I forgot to mention this earlier when I was filming, but I was doing some reading online, and I guess that shock shaft is peened over onto the nut, and for some reason the repair manual just didn't say anything about it, so that's what caused those threads to strip out. So I guess if I were to do it again, I'd probably grind that off first and clean that up a little bit before taking the nut out. That should hopefully prevent that. I got to do something about this broken thread here. I'd like to just cut it off with a Dremel, but I can't seem to find my cutoff tool for my Dremel. I guess I'll try and just wiggle it off and see if it'll break maybe. Got some pliers around, I think. Okay, that came off pretty cleanly without damaging too much of the rest of the threads. I'm going to just clean it up with the grinder part of the Dremel now. Okay, I think I got enough of that burr off now that I can slide the rest of this stuff off without damage. I can finish cleaning it up once all this is off and out of the way so I don't accidentally hit it with the Dremel. Now the Honda manual says you should cover these threads with tape to protect all this stuff before you slide it off. And speaking of things I can't find, a few years ago I got a 10-pack of electrical tape for like $3 or something. And every time I need some, I get a new roll, and then I lose it. So here I am again opening a new roll. I have a feeling that tape is just going to pop right off because it's not sticking all that great with the oil, but we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm still not liking how this thread feels with this piece coming off. I got a little more room to work with now, so I'm going to hit that with the Dremel some more. Okay, let's see if this slides off nicer now. Yeah. That feels pretty good. Now I'm finally down to this bump stop. That thing is disgusting. So yesterday I was pretty concerned about this shock shaft. I was trying to clean up this threads on the end. Used the Dremel like I showed on the video with this little grinding attachment, and I just couldn't get this nut to thread on no matter what I did. I tried running a tap over it and I couldn't get the tap to start, and it would go crooked, and it's giving me all kinds of trouble. And I started to get pretty worried about it because this shock shaft is not a piece you can just order, so it could be big trouble if it's unusable. So what I ended up doing is getting this thread file here, and I'm going to see if that works out for me. So the threads on this are M12 by 150. Hopefully that shows up on the camera. It doesn't always like to focus, but you got the 150 end on here. I'm going to file these threads. Okay, I'm at a point now where this nut will thread on part of the way, then it just stops. But I think the threads are getting past the damaged section on this shaft, and I'm beginning to suspect that it's the nut itself that was damaged on the way out. So I think tomorrow when I'm in town, I'm going to buy another M12 by 1.5 nut, just a generic one to just test the fit of it. And if it slides on nice, then I'll make my decision from there what to do about it. Other news, my dad gave me back the shock body that he took to his work to clean out already, and it's looking pretty good. All that crap from the threads is gone that I tried to clean out unsuccessfully, and just overall really shiny and good looking, so I'm excited about this. So I bought a new nut just to test the threads on this. I'll get the proper one for final assembly later. But as far as this one goes, it will go on, maybe not as cleanly as I'd like it to, but I can get it to thread. Kind of sticks a little bit, but if I put a ratchet on it, it doesn't actually take that much force to turn it, get it to go on. So I think this is going to be alright, and it'll probably actually be good. It'll hold it from vibrating off, so I think this shaft is going to be okay. The only things that the repair manual talks about inspecting are this nitrogen reservoir here, which is a little bit deformed. At least it was when I pulled it out. It seems to have kind of sprung back into shape now, but it's old rubber. I'm going to replace it anyway. The shock shaft, no signs of cracks or deformation, so that should be good. It says to discard this nut and get a new one. I'm definitely going to do that, and it needs a new one either way, since this threads on this one are kind of messed up. The other thing it says to inspect is this rod guide case, it calls it. It says to see if the copper is visible, if it's worn away too much. I don't see that. The rubber looks good. I don't exactly know about this seal here. It said there was supposed to be some grease in it, but doesn't seem to be any grease. It's a cheap enough part. I think I'm just going to go ahead and replace it anyway. Just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and replace this O-ring, even though it doesn't say to. I'm also going to replace this piston ring, if I can find a new one anyway. There's some visible wear on it, just a little bit of haziness. Also going to replace the O-rings on this cartridge here. Once again, they're cheap enough. No point not doing it. And then probably new snap rings too, just for safety. Maybe the final thing is I should probably get a new Schrader valve for this cap. That should be it for the disassembly of this. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for part 2 when I put it all back together and hopefully get the bike going again.